All right, we are ready to move on with the last step of our foil embossing project, which is to begin adding our color to our artwork. So I want you to take your visual journal and have it near you. Remember that the guidelines said your subject matter or the animal or creature in your project was going to be colored in using a minimum of 3 warm colors. So you want to have this as a reference chart to help you. And I want you to be remembering you're using at least 3, but that doesn't mean you can't use more than 3. Okay, so we'll talk about my advice for coloring. So I would advise you to pull up an inspiration image from the resources that were provided in your flip topic. So as you'll see, I've already started adding some color to mine. And what I did is I started with my lightest color first. But before I did that, I took a piece of foil and I just practiced layering the colors down. So my lightest color here was my yellow, and then I explored what it was like to layer orange or red violet over top. Same thing over here. I picked my lightest color, which was my yellow green, which was this one, and then I experimented with layering colors over top of that to add more interest to my artwork. So when you look at this one right now, all I have is the yellow, but that's intentional because my plan is to go back in and layer other colors over top of it. It's easy to layer darker colors over top of lighter ones. It's harder to try and layer the yellow over red. Okay, so that's the purpose with starting with light and then working darker. Okay, so use that inspiration image to guide you. When you're coloring, you want to be careful to take your time and attempt to not tear the foil. If you have some small tears here and there, they're most likely not going to hurt your work. But if you have enormous tears that are starting to detract from your artwork, that will be a problem. So I advise you to also pull up the image of your artwork. So we talked about how you should take a photograph of your artwork before you put the foil on. I just made a photocopy of mine. For you, you should have a photo saved to your phone or your laptop. And then I'm going to use that as a guide. So for my tiny details that I didn't put in yarn, I will be using Sharpie to draw those in. So let's take a look at this process and how I got to this point, and then I will speed the video up and you'll see the finished product and we'll talk about what I did. Okay, so here's what I did during that process, and I sped it up really fast for you. It definitely took a lot longer than what you're seeing in the video, because of course I have the ability to make it faster. So a couple of things to know. I'm always trying to avoid coloring over the silver embossing lines. I don't want that to go away. So I color right up to the edge, but I'm not coloring on top of it. That's number one. Number two, I started with my lightest color and I tried to work thinking about it just like we have in our chart, from our lightest warm color to our darkest warm color, and layered things on that way. I used short marker strokes to indicate texture or create more interest in there, to add in some of those details that I lost from my drawing that I couldn't put in with yarn. Taking my time thinking about what I'm doing, okay? Focusing on the use of 3 or more warm colors in that creature or animal that you decided to use for under the water. Okay. Another thing that you probably saw me do was you saw me check some colors on here to try and figure out. I wanted to make sure that these two colors weren't going to be identical. This is obviously this could be a cool color, but for our project, I had you place it in the warm category. It's red, violet. Red is warm, violet is cool, could go either way. And then you also saw me sometimes wipe off a marker. So what you'll notice is if you go back in to add yellow, the color of the yellow marker will sometimes change because it's picking up values from over here. To clean that marker off, I took it back over to the foil and I just continued to color it until I saw that all of this orange or red that it had picked up was gone. Okay, so that's something else you can do. So it's not a bad idea to have a little piece of foil nearby to test your colors on and make sure that they're clean. If you're going to be using something like this, some of these older ones, definitely check to see if they work. Some of them have been in there a long time, and check to make sure it's actually the color you think it's going to be before you use it. Okay? All right, so this part's done. The next part is to add my cool colors in. I'm going to be using the same method as I did for this. I'm not going to record the whole thing, but it's going to be the same process of coloring in the background, starting with my lighter values first and focusing on thinking about using more than 3 cool colors. 3 is the minimum. And I'm going to start with those light values first, and I'm going to try and build up interest. So it's not just one solid color. So it doesn't look like a coloring sheet unless it's a coloring sheet that you've added some different values and shading on. So the idea is you're using more than one value in this. So it's not just solid yellow or it's not just solid orange, okay? Because that's a little bit boring. You know, for this is definitely more of the 4 level where we're incorporating more values in on top of each other. Do the best you can. What I'm really looking for is the embossing technique should be very apparent, and then your use of a minimum of 3 warm colors in your animal, okay? Or your creature, whatever you want to call it. All right, if you have questions, ask me in class.